Hi guys. Today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how to write a conflict map. And honestly, everything I'm telling you here is the same thing that I would tell you if we were writing a class or a paper for really any class. So the conflict map's not special in that sense. What's going to make the conflict itself different from other things you would write in other political science classes or other social science classes would be the content itself, meaning what you're studying and how you're studying it. Like, for example, with the conflict map, you're going to be looking at causes of conflict, and usually, because you're looking at those, you're also looking at how to reduce that conflict, end that conflict, or build the peace. One of those things there. So there's usually always a target, and that's what makes the conflict map unique. So a lot of the things you're going to be looking specifically for are going to be from that book on, well, not from that book, but that book on conflict analysis is going to help you pinpoint what things you should be looking for. What this is about, what I have here, is going to be how you can build that paper. It's not going to tell you what to look for specifically, because honestly it's going to be different for each conflict map. But the sort of the structure within which you should be looking for that. I know that sounds like a weird thing. Maybe I'll just get started and show you this. Now the other thing I want to say is that everything that we're going to talk about today, I have put this in outline form on Canvas. So there's just a printout of this. It's not the PowerPoint. It's just, well, I'll put the PowerPoint up too, but it's just a Word document that has all the stuff in there. You don't need to type this stuff down. In fact, I'm not going to assume you're going to be writing this down as we go. What I would recommend is you get that outline, maybe print it off or have it sitting by you as we're working through this, so that you can sort of see the things that we're talking about. Yeah, and mostly I'm going over this not because I don't think you can read. I assume you can read. You can look at that and read. But I might want to add some examples. I really want to drive some points home just to make sure you hear it. Not everyone's going to follow this advice, and you may do okay. I will just say this has worked for a number of people, and its goal is not to make things more complex. Its goal is to get a good paper with actually minimal effort. That's the idea here. All right, so let's get after this. All right, writing the conflict map. So where I want to begin with this, and this first video is going to be about before you start. So before you ever start to write for sure, and maybe before you start even to research it, because it's the question about what should I be doing first. So like that, those are the things. Again, I have some things on that outline. Here's where I'll tell you to start. So number one is the topic, and you need to start with something that you care about, something you don't understand, and something you want to change and improve. Ideally, your topic has all three of those. And it's not just because I think you should have those three things, but a paper is a big undertaking. A research paper like this is a big undertaking. And even if you're excited about it on week 1, you may not be excited about it on week 5. Something that you care about, don't understand, and want to change or improve, you'll keep doing the work on because you really do care about it and want to see it improve. So the more you can pick a topic that does that, the more motivated you'll be on week 11. All right. This topic is probably going to be your dependent variable. For those of you who haven't taken scope and methods, that just means the thing you're going to study, your topic. But your dependent variable, so you're going to want to write that down clearly and precisely. Exactly what is it that you want to see? I want to see an increase in, or I want to see an end to the conflict in X, or I want to see an increase in peace-building measures in this place, or I want to see negotiations for peace talks in this place. Whatever that might be, that's the thing that you want clearly. Now, you'll note here, it's not, your topic is not something like Algeria or even conflict in Algeria. That's not a dependent variable. That may be something you care about, but you can't improve. You can sort of say, I'm going to decrease conflict in Algeria. Now you've got something. Now you got a dependent variable. So write it down clearly and precisely, and then double check it. Is this really what you care about? Is this thing that you wrote down the thing you really care about? Or is it not? Have you steered away from the things you really care about? That's, again, the point is, for this, is to make sure it's something that's going to keep you motivated. Make sure it's something that's observable and measurable. That's why Algeria conflict is not really measurable. But a decrease in the number of attacks, for example, might be measurable. An end to the violence is measurable. Those are measurable, observable things. Okay, next. Still things you need before you start. So we got two things so far, just to go back. You need your topic, and you need to know that dependent variable. Write that down. You've got that, you're good to go. This is the thing that we're going to try and understand why it exists and how you can change it to improve it. All right, good. Best guess. What do you think, this is the next thing you're going to do before you get started, what do you think is causing changes in the dependent variable? Why do you think the fighting is happening? Why do you think a lack of peace, if that's what you're looking at, is happening? Why do you think an increase in peace has happened, and how do we get more peace? These whats are your independent variables. These are the causes to the effects that you're going to be studying. State them clearly and precisely, just like we talked about before. Again, same thing. And then your best guess. Why do you think that the independent variable is affecting the dependent variable? Why do you think that poverty, for example, is increasing the amount of violence in this conflict? That's your theory. Why do you think that? Explain why you think poverty is causing that. That's your theory. That's the thing you're going to demonstrate. That's the thing you're going to study. Why the IV causes changes to the DV. Then you're going to put this in writing. You're just going to write it down. Just sit right there and write it down, a one-paragraph thing. Why you have your independent variable, you have your dependent variable. Why does the independent variable cause the dependent variable to change? And then later on, once you're going to get a little more information, you can be more thorough about that. But for now, you just have your idea on paper. Boom. And it's there. And don't lose that piece of paper. That's why you're going to have a conflict journal. You're going to keep and work on the whole time. Check it. Then now we're starting to think about, okay, how are we going to start to get into studying this thing? The place you usually want to start is here, is checking other sources. What do other people think is causing that? The dependent variable you're interested in, what have other people said about it? This is going to be the start of your literature review. Okay, so that's usually the place you're going to start. Is what's the thing you're interested in? What's the topic? What do you think is causing changes in that? Why do you think that's the case? And then go look and see what other people are doing. All right, next, before you start, again, when you're thinking about how do I even get started on this stupid thing, I'm giving you things to get going on. Your research design is how you're going to demonstrate that the IV affects the DB. So now you got this thing on paper. Now the question is, I just wrote this paragraph down. The independent variable causes the dependent variable because blah, 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 blah. Okay, prove it. How are you going to demonstrate that to somebody else? How are you going to show that that's the case? So turn your independent and dependent variable concepts into measurable constructs. Let me just talk about this for a second, this idea. So let's say that one of my dependent variable or independent variables is democracy. More democracy equals less war. Let's just say something like that. So it's democracy. Well, here's the problem with democracy. Democracy is an abstract concept. I can't really measure that. It's like saying happiness, or it's like saying beauty or something like that. It's not really measurable. I can't say, if I'm going to say something is more democratic, the question is, well, how do you know it's more quote unquote democratic? Okay, so that's great. So what you do is you're going to say, I'm going to come up with these constructs, these ways to measure democracy. So if I want to say democracy is increasing, what do I mean? Well, maybe I'll look at some constructs that are used to measure democracy, like say, I'm trying to think, electoral system. Maybe I'll measure that. Maybe I'll measure freedom of press. I don't know how you want to measure that. There's a lot of ways you could go about measuring those things, and there's a lot of ways that have been done. Maybe you need to start there by going to the sources and saying how other people measure democracy. Again, these things that I can say, these aren't democracy per se, but if I look at those and those change, I can say, yeah, that's what I mean when I say democracy is changing as well. So that's what I mean by turning those concepts into constructs, things that are measurable. Then determine how and where you're going to get the data for those constructs, and determine how you will demonstrate causality. How will you show that these constructs lead to these constructs? That's it. I know it sounds complex, but it's not that complex. We do it all the time with things. When we try to demonstrate something is happening, try to tell somebody, yeah, if you do that, this is what's going to happen. We do this all the time. So you're just doing it with this thing that's a little less tangible. All right. Now, I want to be clear about this. You can start, before you start, you can work on this. But as you are working on your research, you will refine this as you go. You'll say, well, I can't really find some good, or that thing that I thought was electoral system, maybe that's not a very good measure of democracy, so I'll change it for something else that I found in the literature over here. So that's one of the things you're going to be looking for. Put your hypotheses into words. Hypothesis is just the DV, or the IV causes changes in the DV, and that's about it. More democracy decreases the likelihood of violence. That's a hypothesis. It's not a good hypothesis, by the way, but it's a hypothesis. And those are and I'm just going to put that in words. Those are the things I'm going to study. That's it. All right, one more thing you're going to do before you start. You're going to come up with outlines. 2 outlines. One outline is going to be a broad outline. How are you going to structure your paper? Like, what are the big sections? And what are you going to try to show in each section? Like, again, think of it like I'm going to say this later, but think of it like a blueprint. Like, this is how my paper is going to look. It's not detailed. It's just the broad things. So I know. And one of the things that's going to be helpful with this is you're going to put this up on your wall, I hope. And then you can say, yeah, I've done that. I still have to work on that. But it's easier on paper like that when you have it mapped out than if it's just a jumble in your head. I have to write, quote unquote, a paper. Then it gets real messy really fast. A more specific outline of each section. So here's this section, and how am I going to do the things I want to do in this particular section? That's it. That's what you can do before you start. Now, when I say before you start, what I mean is before you start writing. It doesn't mean before you start your conflict journal. This could take, everything I just did right there, this could take the next month for you. It could be relatively quick if you kind of know what you're going to do and have an idea and you find good sources. It could be something that takes you the next 4 weeks, even working pretty hard at it. And that's okay. Because again, if you have those pieces in place, imagine if you have all those pieces in place in front of you, your paper is just putting all that together, doing the research and putting all that together. It becomes fairly simple. All right, general format of a paper. I'm going to talk about this here in a second. I'm going to pause, take a drink, and I'll come right back.